Contrast gauge set at 20. Gamilla's missile in my sights.
180 kilometers.
Energy buildup at 100%. Wait for it. Energy buildup at 120%.
The chamber is at its limit, Captain!
Bridge crew, ready to fire. Brace for the flash and recoil.
Kilometers. We're out of time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Fire!
Commander, our systems are down.
Hello and welcome back to another stream from Tachyon Lance. Today we're going to be having a look at the new 3.6 update and the open beta patch that you can now have a look at yourself. So we're going to be having a little look at the actual beta itself and having a look at a few things, and we'll have a look at the patch as well that's coming, and we'll try and match what they say in their words with some of the things we can see in the game, and I'll just point out a few things. I'm not going to go through every little detail because you guys can read that yourself, and if you're probably more interested in the actual main features and some of the combat changes that we're going to have a look at and some of the ascension paths. So we'll go through and have a look at a few things. So I've got the game up here. This is the open beta version you can see down here. So let's go in and have a look at a species or two. So let's have a look at, okay, so one of the things I want to have a look at is a couple changes which will affect a lot of builds in the future for people who are playing, trying to play, I guess, the min-max type of stuff. And that won't affect everyone, but it will affect a few things. Some of the things that will affect is aquatic. Aquatic is now a 2-point trait, as you can see here. So as you can see here, I'm over by 1 point, which means I'm going to have to take out, say, one of these, and I'm going to have to replace it with a 1-point trait, like, say, like natural engineers. So it is going to... Aquatic is still powerful, and it's worth 2 points, really. It should have been 2 points forever. It just means the aquatic builds won't be as powerful as what they were. They're still very good. It just means other builds will be a little bit more competitive. And when you combine that with, say, Masterful Crafters, which now has the artificers only produce consumer goods and trade. They've taken out the engineering research. So early on, when you're going for your consumer goods and building consumer goods up in that first 15 to 16 years, if that's your play style, you're going to be losing a chunk of engineering, which is going to affect how much tech research in ships and armor and or say to get the alloy forges, all those type of things. Engineering is probably the most favored technology. So there is a little bit of a nerf there to Masterful Crafters as well for that Aquatics Masterful Crafters combination, which lots of people play. And they were powerful. They were the go-to civics. So this will just make other builds a little bit better, a bit more balanced, which I think it's a good move by Paradox, well overdue. So it will help out in those regards. So I think that's very good. It's a good move. Okay, so I've just got a game open here. This is just a test game that I've opened up. So some of the things we're going to have a look at first. Let's have a look at the ships. As you know, or some of you know, in the Combat Rebalance, we're adding in a new ship class called Frigate. Now, the frigates are designed to be slower. Don't worry about the total speed. That's just because I've got all the technologies researched at the moment. This has got a base speed of 120, and if you compare that, say, to a Corvette, it's got a base speed of 160, and a destroyer's got a base speed of 140. So a frigate, even though it's smaller than a destroyer, has a slower speed. So you can see it's more vulnerable, easy to catch. Hull point's 400 versus hull point 600, 200. So it's double a Corvette, but it is slower. What's its evasion? what's it, evasion. So frigate is plus 20, so that's what we'll look at. Corvette is 160. Destroyer 140. So you can see the frigates at 120 are going to take a lot more hits. They just don't have the evasion, and they don't have the speed to escape corvettes and destroyers. Now the role of the frigate is basically that, a missile boat. So it's designed to carry torpedo type weapons. Now these are obviously end tier weapons. So we slot the Neutron Launcher in, and let's just have a look at the stats. So you've got all the normal type of damage, accuracy, tracking. So it's got no tracking ability really for smaller ships. Range is 45 to 120. So it's got a minimum range of 45. So anything closer than that, it's not going to be able to shoot. At 120 is its max range. So still got decent long range for that weapon. Now look at the damage. The damage is way down compared to what it used to be. And if you have a look at the firing arc, 25 degrees. So that means the ship has to be basically pointing where it needs to shoot. So it's got a very limited off angle to be able to target other ships, which makes sense for torpedoes. You're pretty much going to be firing them from, I guess, the bow of your ship. If it's, I guess it's like Star Trek shooting your photon torpedoes type thing. Although they also have rear shots as well. So that is interesting. And then you look at the weapon deals additional multiplicative damage based on 100% of the target ship size. So with the targeting computers, it's meant to target larger ships first, such as battleships, juggernauts, titans, those type of things, and probably cruisers as well. We haven't really had time to test it all out yet. So it's meant to target those ships first, and it's meant to do up to 5 times the damage to larger ships, such as battleships. So these things, if they get in within firing range and are able to offload their torpedoes, they're going to do a lot of damage to those bigger ships. So these things, frigates, are designed to kill battleships, titans, and those larger ships. But they're slow, they're vulnerable with their evasion, they've got less hull points than a destroyer. Twice a corvette, but that's going to be whittled away very, very quickly. So we can see that these things dish out the firepower, but if you've got the correct counter, they're going to get hit pretty hard. Devastator torpedoes, or the torpedoes down this type of line, not your energy torpedoes, standard torpedoes. These do more damage, you can see there. They do have a little bit of tracking at 10%, 100% accuracy, but range is 30. So these things, and it's not a minimum range, it can do 0 to 30 range. So you're getting close, it can fire from a distance of 5, no problem. Firing arc, once again, 25 degrees. So the ships have to be aiming at whatever they're shooting at. So if you're in close and there's a big melee and they're not facing you, but you've got to wait so those ships can turn around or aim at a ship that they're aiming at, they want to target, and then fire. So it could be quite interesting with the battles, rather than everything just firing in all directions all at once. You'll watch these ships turn, then fire at the target they want. And you notice that the torpedoes do have the hull points as well. Armor evasion is 0, so they can't evade anything. Speed 11, retargeting 100. They got 100% shield penetration, 50% armor. They also do the 100% multiplicative damage down the bottom. So these are very, very powerful. You'll notice too in some of these designs. Let's have a look at the destroyer. Let's have a look at some of these weapons. These are obviously kinetic weapons, medium autocannons. Now you can see they do have a range of 35. That means they can target ships from 0 to 35 range. Even though it doesn't say 0 to 35, it is from 0 to 35. Maybe Paradox will update that. I think it has been requested, because it is a little bit confusing when you see some of the other stats. Like, let's have a look at a battleship, and it will say range 45 to 150, but then it says for these things range 40, but it doesn't say 0 to 40, so it's a little bit confusing. So going back to the destroyer, you can see there 0 to 35, that will be the range for those weapons. Now let's change it to say a point defense. We've got any missiles? No, we don't have missiles on this one. Corvette. Oh yes, we do have missiles. Sorry, that's the new thing here. Missiles can now be in say medium slot. Some of them will be in small slots as well. Just want to see if I can find one for a small slot. Here we go. They're just small slot missiles there. For some reason it just appeared as obsolete when the swarmer ones. So you can put missiles in there like that if that's what you want. So the missiles, the 100 range, no minimum range, which is nice. Same as the swarmer, 120. There's no multiplicative damage. That's only for the torpedoes. So they've moved the missiles back from the G slots into the M and S, which is what we had years ago. So they've gone back with that, which I think is a good move. It might bring missiles back into more of a useful role. People don't tend to use many missiles that I've seen anyway. Now, the good thing about energy weapons now is we slot some energy weapons in here. Let's just put a few different varieties in there. Right, energy weapons have no minimum range, even if we put them in the medium slot. No minimum range, even if we put it into a large slot. No minimum range. So all your energy weapons can shoot from 0 to whatever their maximum range is, which is good because if you've got a battleship and you're doing an artillery barrage and you're firing off your let's look at it right here. You're firing off your giga cannon, right? It's got a range of 45 to 150. So once ships get under that range, it's no good. And if you don't have any weapons which can shoot less than 45, your battleships are in trouble. So you might want to have a few autocannons on there, 0 to 40 range, so they can engage at really tight range. This reminds me of like Battlestar Galactica type thing with all the guns firing everywhere and going crazy with all those kinetic weapons. So that's quite good. The different types of weapons, like once again, no minimum range on the energy weapons. Plasma throwers are a little bit different. They do have a minimum range, 45 to 80 for large weapons, and you will find this on a number of types of weapons as well. All different sizes of the lasers do not have a minimum range. The plasma throwers have a minimum range for large weapons, 45 to 80. Medium and small have no minimum range, so they can fire at targets anyway. So that's a consideration when designing your ships. You might not just want to go for the largest, most powerful. You might want smaller and medium-sized weapons to counter destroyers and corvettes, or even frigates if they're getting close enough. So arc emitters do have a minimum range there of 10. The long range out to 150. Just think if anything has a firing arc, but doesn't seem to be. Disruptors, range of 40, no minimum range, which you wouldn't expect. Neutron torpedoes, which we've looked at. So the missiles, no minimum range, which is good. Swarmer missiles, no minimum range. Torpedoes, which we looked at, the standard torpedoes. Nice close-in powerful weapons. Point defense, range of 30. Now your kinetic weapons. Let's have a look at kinetic weapons. No minimum range there. So they can do from 0 to 50, 0 to 75, and 0 to 100. So your kinetic weapons can engage at all levels, which is good. Small, medium, large. So they'll be able to shoot targets that come in close, which is good. And that's for your railgun type weapons, your Gauss cannon, which is nice. Kinetic Artillery, 45 to 100. Your giga cannons. Auto cannons, which we looked at. Even the large ones have no minimum range. Nanite auto cannon. We don't often see these, but they can be a bit hard to get. Flak batteries. Mining laser. Energy siphons. So you can see there's quite a range that's going on here. Now, they have said that the targeting computers should work better with the, say, battleships. If you set it for artillery, it should try to stay at its maximum weapon range, not close into its smaller weapon range or medium weapon range. It should stay at its largest weapon range, same as carriers, and then the small ship should go engage at whatever computer you've set them at. If you've set them at to line, it should follow those tactics. In theory, anyway, from what they've said. So I think it's working somewhat, but I'm sure it's going to need some tweaks. You will notice this role here, ship role. This is so you can set ships, say artillery, and you go clear design and just go auto complete, and it will try and set it as an artillery ship, although I'm not really sure on that. Let's try and see carrier. Okay, set it as carrier. Let's see if it's a gunship. Okay. Tier 3 kinetics. What about artillery? I'm not sure that's an artillery. I would think it would be going with maybe some, like this, kinetic batteries, kinetic artillery. But I guess it's good to say put a couple in there like that, and you might want to keep a couple close-in weapons. You might want to make the, you might want to keep a couple medium weapons to engage those frigates if they manage to get through. So it's going to be really interesting to see people's fleet combinations, what they come up with. Some issues I've seen and I think it's already been mentioned by a few people, is people are just going to have, say, a fleet, say, fleets in, let's have a look here. Here's some fleets here. People are just going to stack fleets up, say, on the edge of the system here. They might have a fleet of corvettes and destroyers, and then a fleet of frigates behind that, and then a fleet of cruisers and battleships further back. So instead of having one mixed fleet, they'll have still big doom stacks, but just of one ship type, but stack them up in a line in the battle. It'll take a little bit of micro, but they'll just put the right corvettes right there, bigger ships back here, frigates there, and they can fire their torpedoes while the little ships engage the enemy. So hopefully Paradox fix that. I'd like to see some type of debuff for ships that have, say, one class of ship or two classes of ship, or don't have, or some type of mechanic if they say don't have enough screening ships for the size fleet they have. If your fleet is, say, 50, maybe you need 20 of them must be a screening ship, something like that. So, and if you don't have that, and the more screening ships you lose, maybe your fleet efficiency drops down. For people that play Hearts of Iron, it might be a bit like the ship battles, where you have screening ships protecting your capital ships, and the lower your screening ships, the less efficiency you've got there. And it's a bit more advanced combat system, that is, or probably a fair bit more advanced, more intricate in detail. But they could do something of a limited version, like when you have your jump drive, and you jump into a system and you have a debuff for a period of time. They could add a debuff like that to a fleet that doesn't have screening ships and just has battleships. So instead of being able to fire everything at 100% efficiency, maybe they'll only operate at, say, 50% efficiency, which means all the alloys and you've invested in that fleet is only working at 50% what it could. So it may force people to change differently. That's something I would like to see. How it can be implemented, I'm not really sure. Maybe you guys can come up with some good ideas. If you are liking this video so far, do hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, because it does help me make these videos and encourage me to keep making them. So what else have we got to look at in the combat system? Let's have a look at the ship designer. So I think I've sort of covered a lot of the basics of this. We're just going to have to play around and see how this, and we will be testing over the next few weeks and see how this all plays out. I'm sure we're going to have lots of videos of people doing that, and I'll be doing a few videos as well. Alright, how about we look at some Ascension Tiers, because I know people are very interested in that, and I've had a little look at this. Okay, so we've obviously got a new tradition here, politics. So this, I think this is to do with our galactic community. Is it Federation type things as well? Diplomacy. So envoys, +1 envoy. Adopting all politic traditions will grant the following 10% diplomatic weight. Yeah, so it's all about diplomacy. Obviously I haven't got the art in here yet. 25% influence cost for veto resolutions, envoys. I'll just hover over these so people can read them. So it's very diplomatic focus, this one. Is this to do with federations at all? I'm just wondering. Do you need a federation to unlock this? No, it doesn't look like it. Envoys assigned to the galactic community will now produce 0.1 influence. So the galactic stage is set and we tend to have the first role. So it's got to be linked to the galactic community. Alright, let's have a look at these new traditions which were previously part of your Ascension paths. Well, most of them were with genetic, psionic, and synthetic. Now we've also got cybernetic. So they've sort of split up what synthetic was and created cybernetic, and there was a bit of a lack there for machines and cybernetic races. So they've fleshed that out and separated the two, which is really, really nice. So we've got cybernetic. We'll just go through these. So unlocks a special project which grants all species a cybernetic trait. So you get the cybernetic trait, which is good. It gives some nice buffs. We'll have a look at that in a while. 10% from Cyborg pops for resources. Organic species trait +1 pick, which is good. Gain access to the simulation citizen species right, which is good, so you can assimilate the species, allowing future populations to be turned into cyborgs. And that's what we want for a cybernetic race. Unlock cybernetic traits for species modification. So then we can actually modify our cybernetic species, which is good. Modify species special project -50%, which is great. And reduce the speed when you want to modify the species. Organic species trait pick +1. Now when I tested this, you get +1 pick there, +1 pick here when you finish it. So it should be 2+ picks for all of this. But they only gave me 1 pick, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's a little bit buggy. So I couldn't test that out properly because I was expecting 2 points and I only got 1. So I couldn't really maximize the species out when I was playing around with it. Cyborg upkeep -10%. Unlocks policy assembly standard cybernetic components, allowing robotics to produce new cyborg pops. So our roboticists will actually be able to have population growth in cyborgs, which is good, or to assemble them. So it makes it a pretty powerful pick, and I'm going to show you why in just a moment. We'll just have a look at these ones quickly. Let's have a look at synthetic, because that's probably another one with some good changes. So we've got adopting all traditions here, capital building +1 roboticist, mechanical species trait pick +1. Unlock special project to transfer the minds of our citizens to synthetic bodies. Yep, so that's the research project you have to do, and you also have to do one here for that as well. So the flesh is weak, so you have to do that. And then you get a situation you have to complete. Then we've got robot modification points +2. So you get 2 for there, and then 1 for finishing it. Oh, that mechanical species trait pick +1. Modification special project -50%, so same as cybernetic there. Robot amenities -10%. Robot output +10%. So I'm not sure this is correctly balanced with cybernetic, because there you get +2 points and you get +1 for unlocking it. Unless they're saying it's different, because that's robot modification points +2 and it's mechanical species trait +1. I'm not sure if that's considered two different or it's the same, because we only get +2 in total for cybernetic, but there could be a reason for that, which I'll demonstrate in a while. So psionic, I'll just run through these quickly. I won't read them all because it'll bore you to death, but you can just have a little look at this. I'll just run through the things so you can see them. So it is interesting that they've done it this way now, that you have to do the tradition tree, and then that unlocks the Ascension perk that you have to do. So it's really good. And then you can do, you have to have mind over matter before you can actually adopt this. And same with, you have to have synthetic evolution. The flesh is weak to already have done this. I picked this. So this would be, you can pick the flesh is weak as your second. Ascension perk, and then you can start the cybernetic tree. And that's the same with all of these. Genetic. The genetic is still very powerful. It's probably still the most powerful, to be honest. Clone batch produce additional +3 organic pop assembly. Nice. And what was the total there? Yeah, genetic always just seems they always just seem to have a little bit of an advantage. So then we still have all our normal trees here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in and load a game that I did from earlier. I think it was this one. Okay, let's have a look at our trees. Yeah, this is one I did earlier. So I picked out a few trees, completed my cybernetic path. So you can see I've got it all selected. So I should have 2 additional points. One from there, organic species trait pick +1. Organic species trait pick +1. So I should have 2. When I go to my species and have a look here. Okay, I do have +2 there. Okay, that's okay. I thought it was bugged, but it was bugged earlier, but it seems a reload fixed it. That's interesting. Because I only showed 1 earlier. So 2, 1, 1. So what you can do is with this, because I started with this is overtuned. Okay, I'll actually just hop out of this. I'll go back to the menu. I'll just show you something. So with overtuned, so we've got our pre-plane growth, and I put augmented growth in there, so it's +10%, and we got the +30% pop growth speed there. Our overtuned traits, aquatic in there, so I had to put the 1 point in there because you got aquatic. So you don't have to use aquatic. I just had these pre-built species. I didn't want to design you one, so I just kept it. And it's lithoid. So we got overtuned traits in there. Okay, so this is the overtuned origin, and we do start with gene tailoring. So at the start of the game, we start with 1 point. So what we can do, because we're going to be a little bit creative. We're not starting a new game. Let's go back to the load game. Go back to here. Okay, we go to the species, because we've finished our cybernetic tree. And as you can see, we've got our cybernetic trait. So habitability +20%. So that's going to be really useful if you got an aquatic start like that for your non-wet worlds. That sort of negates that habitability negative, which is great. So habitability, army damage +10, leaders +40 years. That's quite nice. But what we can do, because we've got these 2 points, we've got set. I actually think I didn't have 2 points. I think it was bugged at 1 point, but I've unlocked all the technologies, and you get that rare tech for 1 additional point. So I think that may be it, because I've already got the gene tailoring. But anyway, what you can do with this is, let's go create template. As you can see, I've got a lot of traits here. You've got a lot of your biological traits here. You've got your overtuned traits here. And then we've got our cybernetic or machine traits here. So I've got 2 points, 2 picks left. So if you wanted to, you could take out that and put in that. We've still got a point left, so then we can go, oh, let's really make our researchers good and chuck in that. So now I've got the 10% research and the 20% research. So we've got the 30%. Or you can put in, you can change it to whatever you want. So you can change it to, oh, I need more minerals at this stage of the game. I'm really struggling. And voila, you can convert your pops into extra minerals. So you can combine biological. You got your biological traits. You got overtuned traits. And then you got your cybernetic or mechanical traits. So you got all these combinations into the cybernetic race, which is really, really good. And you can see the the amount of combinations you can do here is a lot. So I'm not going to try and guess which ones are the best, but you just can play around with this and work it out for yourselves depending on what type of build you got. But yeah, so this is going to be really good, mixing those overtuned traits with cybernetic species. So I can see overtuned and cybernetic is going to be very, very interesting and probably quite powerful unless they nerf it in the beta. So that could be the nerf stick might hit that. But at the moment, I think it's pretty powerful and very, very interesting, because cybernetic should be able to combine the best of mechanical with the best of the biological species that you created. So this should be possible. And maybe that is why cybernetics seem to get one less trait pick than machines and genetic, because perhaps we can do combinations here which make it significantly more powerful, which will bring it back into line with genetic once you've set up your species. So I think that is really, really good. And one thing you can do too with overtuned, because you do start with the genetic tailoring at the start, you can create a species right at the very start of the game. You can, because I started with the 10% and you got one trait point to use at the start of the game, you can take that out, and I did create a species here and put the 20% straight in. So I'll go in there just so everyone can see. Get rid of the 10%, and you can put the 20% in right at the start of the game, because you've got 1 point to play with at year 0. So it gives you a bonus point right at the start of the game using overtuned. You can't afford to convert all your pops at the start of the game, because it costs it'll take you about 200 something months. I've tested it. But what you can do is your new pops that grow, or when you colonize new worlds, you pick that new species to colonize that world, and you grow those pops from there, so that they will become your future the majority of your future population, and you convert the population of your home world when you can afford to do so. You won't want to do it early on, because it will delay you far too long in tech, and you just can't afford it. It's just crazy. But that is a little trick you can do with overtuned, and then after that you can add the cybernetic component into it, which is all here, and you can see all those traits and different combinations you can play with. Plus you've got your leaders, the cybernetic now, so pop upkeep, research speed, ship weapon damage, ship weapon range, army damage. So cybernetic is pretty good. I think it's pretty powerful. So yeah, there's a lot here to play with the new the new beta patch. Is going to be a lot of testing, and people are going to be testing different ships against ships and what combination of fleet works, because you can see, let's have a look at the fleet managers, and this is what the AI has come up with. When I let the game play for 100 years, just let it set it up themselves. This is what the AI has come up with. Battleships aren't tech yet, so this is the type of combination the AI has built. So quite a lot of corvettes, frigates, some destroyers in there, and cruisers to do the big damage. And what type of ship designs have they actually designed? Let's have a look. So just some autocannons. Yeah, got the torpedo tech there. Autocannons again. So it's only year. It's only year. It's not my longer playthrough. Sorry, I haven't. Oh, it's 2300. It is too. Yeah, it is. I thought it was the 2200 there for a second. So that for some reason the AI seems to love the autocannons. You look at these designs, autocannons everywhere. Look, autocannons. Okay, Paradox. You might need to look at that a bit. Why autocannons everywhere? Okay, at least you've got it right there. Even autocannons here. What is kinetic no good? Lasers no good? Plasma no good? All of a sudden. Let me have a look. Maybe it's the. Is it the tracking? Maybe accuracy and tracking, perhaps 50%. Could be compared to say other weapons. Tracking 20, 30. 35, that might be it. Might be the tracking. That's maybe why the AI might be going for the higher accuracy and tracking. That's probably it. What about the we've got new star bases. Star bases. So they haven't really built many. What have we got in here? Mostly kinetic. Torpedoes. It's funny how they don't branch out into many other types of weapons in the star bases. Okay, so we'll just have a little look at the patch notes. I'll just, I won't put them up on the screen, I'll just talk about them. So the goals that I've outlined is basically to shake up the meta, improve general base combat while maintaining a limited scope. They don't want to spend much money changing 3D assets and designing new ships and that. So they provided the frigate, which is good because it was previously going to be called the Torpedo Corvette. So they have changed that over recent weeks and actually made a separate ship, which is really, really good. So what they want trying to fix is the Alpha Strike from battleships, and battleships being the main go-to ship later in the game, which is sort of correct. A lot of people just use battleships and not much else, but cruisers are very effective till later in the game as well, with their higher disengagement chance. High evasion destroyers, if you get a lot of the technologies and build them up, they can be very deadly as well, but you have to really know what you're doing and really aim for all the techs and design them, so that can be really, really effective. So, but overall, yes, battleships is just the main to go-to ship. So they've introduced ship roles with the auto designs that we had a look at, with like gunships and artillery ships and things like that. So they got the new frigate in there to add in, hopefully a torpedo barrage ship, basically, to hopefully do a lot of damage to those bigger ships. They got the minimum range on weapons and on large weapons, and so that's going to shake up the types of weapons people build to combat the different types of ship people are going to use, which is really good. Strike craft can no longer intercept missiles, they're just basically used to intercept other strike craft. Flak batteries are stronger against strike craft apparently, while point defense is mostly to counter missiles and torpedoes. So, and strike craft will rely more on shields. Missiles and torpedoes are more reliant on armor. So, which is, you think it's correct? You know, little fighter ships would have stronger shields, not a lot of armor, while missiles and torpedoes would have more armor and limited or no shields, because they're traveling at high speed and just going to go straight into the ship like a normal torpedo we have today. Combat computers will now ignore certain weapon ranges for design purposes, so hopefully that'll fix the, as you talked about a minute ago, about going artillery ships charging in when they should be staying at long range, and carriers getting too close into the battle instead of staying at long range launching their fighters, and that's, so hopefully that's going to start to work better. Ships can now get a limited number of disengagement opportunities per combat, so this is where the disengagement chance is going to change. All current drives provide one disengagement roll, except for PSI jump drives, which provide two. Once the ship takes hull damage below its designated threshold, and the hit and run war doctrine grants all of your ships an additional attempt. Civilian ships are set to evasion will continue to try to disengage with each hit. So disengagement seems like it's going to be harder now. Not as many ships will disengage by the sound of it, which means battles are going to be more important or more decisive, hopefully. Which could be good and bad, because if you overwhelm the AI in one battle and win the battle, then we could be back to where one doomsday beats the other, war over, which we don't want that. So they might need to tweak that disengagement and see how it pans out, because I don't like that if we're going back to what it was a couple of years ago when one battle wins the war, which shouldn't really be like that. It's not, the battles aren't perfect at the moment, but I think it's a lot better than what we've had in the past. So I really do enjoy the battles at the moment. Some evasion has been replaced with other effects. I think it's because some evasion, like high evasion destroyers, is getting a little bit ridiculous. So I think they've taken a few of those little things out. So that's a lot of the combat changes. So it's going to hopefully shake up the meta. As we saw, we've got corvette, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battleships now. So it's got 5 main ship types instead of 4. The main ship roles that we have are screens, gunships, artillery, brawlers, torpedo, and carrier. So corvette destroyers and defense platforms will be screening type ships. Corvettes, destroyers, cruisers, battleships can be gunships. Artillery ships can also be corvettes, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. Titans, defense platforms. Brawlers are going to be corvettes, destroyers, get in close, brawl the enemy, tie them up, try and do as much damage as you can. So your frigates and cruisers can do a lot of damage with their torpedoes, because cruisers can have torpedoes as well. And carriers can be cruisers, battleships, and defense platforms. So they should hopefully stay at range. Other than your defense platforms, they don't move obviously. But cruisers and battleships have to stay at range, launch their strike fighters, and they can get in and mess up a lot of those smaller ships, and then hopefully hit those frigates and take them out the battle. Okay, so we do have open beta, as you know, so get in there, test that out. There is a lot of other changes that we've got in the 3.6 update. It's not just the combat rebalancing and ascension paths. There are a lot of other improvements to the AI, to the UI, there's. I'm not gonna go through them all the bug fixes. I'll just see if I can mention some of the big things. I've mentioned all the combat ones. What are some of the features? So they've added an archaeological site in a new solar system with a debris belt. So look out for that if in the beta. I won't say anything more about it. I have heard what it is, but I won't spoil it for everyone. Added Ascensionist Civic for regular Empire. An equivalent for hives and machine, provides 25% planetary ascension effects, minus 10% cost. So that's just helping with your planet ascension to reduce those costs there if you like to really micro and ascend your worlds a lot, which is very useful. Even I forget about it sometimes. It's especially good on your large worlds, Econopolises and things like that. Added a Holy Covenant Federation type and Conclave Federation election type. So this is a religious type federation, which from what I've seen, it's going to be really good for roleplay, I think, especially if you're playing those religious type races. So then it can create a religious federation. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting as that plays out in the galaxy. Added Cordyceptic Drone Civic for hive minds, allowing them to reanimate organic space fauna. So that means they can kill all your space cows and other life fauna in space, and they'll get events where they can, or situations where they can actually reanimate them. And I think they start with three space creatures as well. Haven't played that one yet, but I think that's what it is. Added various new galaxy shapes, so you can have different types of spirals and arms and different regular galaxy shapes. There's plenty of those type of things. So I showed you the new politics tradition there, and that's linked to the Federation DLC, and it requires the galactic community to exist. That's what I thought, linked to the galactic community. So if you like having a diplomacy type build and you just want to build up your empire, that might be a good one. We've talked about the Ascension Pass, synthetic and cybernetics and synthetics. I won't talk any more about that. With the latest 3.53, you won't get any more alerts about envoys dying. That was annoying. I don't know why you bothered with that. It should never have been in there. And AI should now research debris. Apparently there's a problem with that. I never noticed it, but it's obviously in the background there. The habitability planet icons in the system view can now be clicked just like on the galaxy map. So that's good. Added planet revolt to planetary revolt situation. Okay, well that's good. Added planet automation setting, which allows for construction even during resource deficits. Rolled slave revolt content into general separatist revolt situation. Okay, good. Change how planet automation is presented in the planet view to be more clearly shown that there are settings that the player can use. Yeah, that's good, because if you can have a revolt, it should be a major issue and it should be very visible. Planet automation crime management will now forbid enforcer jobs if you have 0 crime and allow enforcer jobs if you have more than 27 crime. Okay, good. So But I did notice that with the automation. They weren't really doing anything to fix jobs. I actually noticed it last night in a game I was playing, because I started having these events from sectors that I had automated. I go there and go, what? Why have you got 45% crime? What's going on? So that's nice. So you won't have to micro that if you've had that problem. The tooltip for planetary automation designation setting now explains when it will create a new job. Good. So that's good. Balance, shared burden now doubles as unity gained from egalitarian faction. Ensured consistency in the toxic god starting resource. The home systems, yeah, okay, that's good, because there were some problems of alloys and energy not appearing properly. They fixed that. Federation subjects that cannot vote can no longer persuade Federation members to do some voting as well, or invited into a Federation. Cap noxious happiness bonus at 40%. That's a good idea, because that can get rather ridiculous. Vassals that leave an overlord's war by a change in the agreement will now get a truce with every opponent. That makes sense. And here's some good changes here. The fixable segments of a shattered ring origin can now be colonized on game start, depending on the guaranteed habitable world setting. Shattered ring worlds are no longer ideal worlds, but have a base of 100% habitability. Reduce cost and time to restore the shattered ring worlds by 25%. Repairing shattered ring segments now qualify you for the Galactic Wonders Ascension perk. Colonizable shattered ring segments have a large number of blockers, including some that require advanced technology to clear but impact the habitability of the segment. So shattered rings are basically getting a nice bonus now. They're getting a buff, and their colony and designation on ring worlds now provide plus 10% pop growth and assembly speed. This can be multiplied through planetary ascension. The default ring designation provides plus 15%. So that's really good. They're trying to bring ring worlds back up to being sort of like an Econopolis, because everyone's building Econopolises now and not building ring worlds because they nerfed them too hard previously. So, and they're actually nerfing Econopolises a bit. They're reducing the growth from 50% pop assembly growth speed down to 25 for both pop growth and assembly speed. So a bit of a nerf there for Econopolises. So trying to bring them back into balance so people build more ring worlds, which, to be honest, I haven't been building ring worlds in my games because it just really wasn't worth it. Now it probably will be, and it's making the Shattered Ring origin a lot better to start. So food processing centers, mineral purification hubs, energy nexuses, alloy nanoid plants, civilian replicators, and a whole bunch of other buildings now cost upkeep on ring worlds in exchange for providing the benefits normally given by their related orbital ring buildings. Add an event on game start with common ground origin to let you pick your federation type. That's nice. So you can actually pick the type of federation you want to be at the start of the game. That is really good. Mechanist origin now provides 15% robot assembly speed and 1 robot trait pick for when you unlock robo modding. That's very nice as well. The starting robots for the Mechanist origin now start with the bulky and high maintenance traits. The Mechanist origin now grants robo modding technology as a research option from the start of the game. That's very nice as well, so you can get that and start modifying your robots. So yeah, they've buffed the Mechanist as well. That's good. It did need to be buffed. If a species cannot live on a planet, it is now the first to be purged. Okay, it's now allowed for the galaxy to contain multiple Void Dweller empires. Never knew that was a problem. Artificers now no longer choose engineering research. Yeah, we've been through that. Efficient bureaucracy now grants bureaucrats, priests, managers, and deaf priests with edict fund production. Pearl divers had their trade output reduced and the consumer goods output increased, with corresponding increase in food and mineral upkeep. Okay, so just a little bit of balance there. Dramatically increased the absolute value of opinion modifiers. So I think that'll fit the affect the galaxy diplomacy stuff. What's this? Increased opinion penalty for undertaking become the crisis. Yep. There's a few other ones here about diplomacy. I'm not going to go through all of these because it is a bigger list. Keeps going on and on. I'm just going to read. We've talked about the Federation. Logic engine trait is now allowed on droids. That's probably good. Imperialist and supremacist factions will now be pleased forever if you defeat a Leviathan, not just for 20 years. Okay, that's good. Reduced governing ethics attraction for newly conquered pops. Okay, so that might be a problem. Several factions now care about the type of federation you're in if one is attached to a particular ethic. Okay. Pureless faction will now care about how much your fleet power you are using. Good. So they've been tweaking ethics a fair bit, but I'll look at this as well. Occupied planets no longer produce or consume resources from buildings or pops. Balanced harmony, prosperity, mercantile, versatile, and adaptability traditions. Okay, we'll have to have a little look at that. There might be a few tweaks there. Slightly increase the chance of having a unique first contact event chain. Okay, so there might be some unexpected events there to meet the other races, and I think it takes 30% longer now to meet them. So they made it longer. Cyborg and Sentinel factions now scale to a limited degree based on the setting for in-game crisis difficulty. Okay, so that's going to make it a little bit harder. Splinter Hive holdings now require at least 30 pops present on their subject planet to be constructed. Tweaked the galactic market formula. They've had a whole heap of performance and stability updates as well. A whole heap of UI changes, improvements to the AI. I'm not going to go through them. There are a long list of changes here. You guys can read all that for yourselves, and I'll put the link in the description, as well as a heap of bug fixes. So it's quite a big. I'm just having a look through it now. It's quite a big list. Yeah, it's a big list, and modding changes as well. Quite a lot of changes there as well. So this is a big update. This is a lot of changes. All the combat changes, the patch changes, Ascension changes. The only thing that worries me is, are they changing too much at once? I hope they get this right, because I don't want to see the game go back to the state it was a couple of years ago when it wasn't in the best condition, before they brought in this custodian group to do regular updates and patch it. So I just hope they're not taking on too much at once. But it's good they're doing this open beta, which is really good. So test it out, guys, and put the feedback in there so that we can work out these bugs and identify balance issues and things like that, because we don't want to see that sneaking the game. So it'll probably be about this beta for about maybe a month or so, you'd think. Hopefully a month or more to this many changes, this big of a changes. So yeah, get in there and give it a whirl. But it is interesting to see what they're gonna come up with next year, because you think this must lead into an expansion. So it must be a combat expansion, do you think, with this? That's what I'm thinking. And we've already heard snippets about another endgame crisis possibly out there, and they're adding in these other planets and special systems and a bit of a storyline. I think it's maybe linked to the hunters who are chasing the Praetorian across the galaxy, and that's where the Praetorians end up in our galaxy if you get that endgame crisis. So I think it's linked a little bit to that, perhaps, from what we've heard. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see. So test out the beta. I won't talk anymore. I'm losing my voice. So if you do like this video, hit that like button, give the beta a try, and look out for more videos from me in the near future on different builds and what we can do. And there's going to be a lot of changes to builds with all the changes we've got going on here. So hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.